Story 1, more of a job-specific issue, but any tradesperson who argues that modern personal protective equipment is unnecessary is mistaken. It does not matter if your grandfather used a paint sprayer without a respirator. I am trying to protect my lungs. Work smarter. Putting yourself in an early grave to make shareholders or your boss happy is foolish. Story 2. I once had a job with what was called a no-fault policy. If you were late or absent for 7 days in a year without prior notice, you were fired. Prior notice was 1 week's warning. If you were sick for 2 consecutive days, that counted as 2 points against you. If you were late because of an accident ahead of you on the highway, that was 1 point. If there was a blizzard and they closed the road, that also counted as 1 point. I never received more than 3 points, but one lady whose children were sick and in the hospital accumulated 3 points in a week. No fault meant it was not the company's fault if you got fired. Story 3. Working out while sick may cause you to sweat out your illness, but in reality, you are prolonging your recovery and potentially getting others sick at the gym as well. Story 4. Diamonds. Diamond engagement rings only became popular in the 1920s due to aggressive marketing by the De Beers diamond cartel. Diamond mining is often conducted under horrendous conditions, and many of the stones are kept in vaults to maintain high prices. That $1,000 diamond ring is a misconception. Diamonds are not as rare as they are perceived to be. Story 5. Irresponsibly selective breeding of dogs leads to serious consequences. People often desire cute, petite dogs or muscular breeds, while completely disregarding how genetic deformities can negatively impact their quality of life. Many of these animals die relatively young, and if they do reach old age, they often suffer terribly as their health issues become more pronounced. Sadly, many individuals who choose to breed or own these dogs end up abandoning them or neglecting them until they can no longer cope with their struggles and ultimately die. Story 6. Providing children and adults with open access to social media is detrimental to their mental well-being. Story 7. An 8-hour workday, 5 days a week, is still considered the minimum expected standard for employees. This should be the maximum as stipulated by labor laws and guidelines established decades ago, not the bare minimum. The COVID-19 pandemic highlighted how unnecessary this standard is and how detrimental it can be to society and worker health overall. Most people can complete their tasks with a flexible schedule that allows for more time at home. However, we continue to cling to tradition and outdated practices in this area. Story 8. Only getting 2 days for the weekend each week never feels long enough. I believe 3-day weekends should become the norm, and the work week should be Monday through Thursday. 4-day weekends may be too long, though. They should be reserved for special occasions. Story 9. The 30 minutes or it's free pizza delivery trend ended in the 1990s. Yet many people still believe it applies to every restaurant. I dislike having to explain that it does not. Story 10. Giving cats milk is not advisable as they are lactose intolerant. If you choose to give them milk, ensure it is milk specifically formulated for cats. Story 11. Going broke to have an extravagant wedding and spending money on things that ultimately do not really matter is concerning. I am at an age now where people around me are starting to marry, and my boyfriend and I are actively keeping a list of things we have missed or need to avoid for our own eventual marriage. Story 12. Sun tanning. Tans are a persistent trend, but the damage is far more lasting than any trend. People of all skin tones should wear sunscreen every day. Thank me in 30 years. Story 13. Giant green lawns are primarily non-native turf grass treated with chemicals. This year, World Migratory Bird Day had the tagline "No insects, no birds" because many bird populations are declining due to the collapse of insect populations. There are several reasons for this, but on a micro level, monoculture lawns are rendering entire areas virtually devoid of insect life. This issue is exacerbated by municipal mosquito spraying, which kills all insects, not just mosquitoes, and by the absence of native plants in places where they are permitted to grow, such as landscaping and parks. The previous trend was to maintain large lawns to demonstrate wealth, showcasing that one did not need to grow food. This idea has become so ingrained in our culture that breaking free from it is incredibly challenging. Story 14. Fitness and fad diets. Weight training and resistance exercises are beneficial for people of all ages. For children, there is no evidence of growth plate damage or abnormalities. After menopause, resistance training is even more advantageous as it helps reduce issues related to osteoporosis by stimulating bone growth and mineral density. The core problem lies in the poor quality and misinformation from purportedly reputable sources. Fitness influencers often provide misleading information, and even many medical professionals weigh in on topics outside their expertise, undermining the respect associated with their qualifications. In my experience, general practitioners often lack adequate knowledge about exercise and should refrain from prescribing exercise plans or advice. Instead, they should refer patients to specialists or qualified professionals. Exercise is a distinct specialty in medicine, requiring a specific knowledge base. The fitness industry is poorly regulated, leading to a proliferation of questionable practices and misinformation. As a result, the general public is inundated with misleading information from unqualified sources and struggles to find reliable guidance. Story 15. Clinging to differences and using them to define rather than similarities leads to division. Differences between people that are used to justify hate, treating others as less than human, or simply failing to see them as individuals. We all have more in common than what separates us. So why are we not working together? Story 16. The way we treat children can be condescending. Children need people they love and trust to help them understand the world. Talking to an older child as if they are a baby, or saying no constantly without explanation, is that really helpful? I remember feeling frustrated with adults when I was a child, and it was only when I learned the word patronizing that I understood why I felt that way. You are not just raising children. You are providing lifelong guidance and support to the adults they will become. Story 17. I have never understood how you can limit people's sick time or provide it in advance. A person may become ill 3 times in 1 year. The United Kingdom has sickness policies to prevent abuse, and as a non-national health service nurse, I do not receive sick pay. If I am unwell, I will be off for as long as necessary. The system in the United States is quite bizarre. Story 18. Private health insurance. The United States pays more for insurance, almost double, for worse outcomes and lower life expectancies. Story 19. 5-day work weeks are frustrating and driven by greed. The world would be a much happier place if 4-day work weeks were normalized. Story 20. Washing raw chicken with water before cooking is unnecessary and an unsafe food preparation practice. Story 21. I am in real estate. I see a new generation of realtors still saying, "You are wasting your money on rent," all while trying to sell houses to people who can't afford them. Yes, your mortgage will be roughly what you are paying in rent, but you haven't taken into account that owning a house incurs costs and taxes. I have pulled more than a few aside and told them that what they are doing is immoral. For those who do not know, the slogan "You are wasting your money on rent" was created by the National Association of Realtors in the 1980s to encourage renters to enter the housing market. It is a completely fabricated statement that does not apply to everyone universally. Sometimes it makes sense to rent, and some people are better off renting given their lifestyle choices. Story 22. Cesar Millan and the misguided theories he promotes have been thoroughly debunked. His ideas are not based on accurate studies of dogs or wolves. These misconceptions have justified people taking out their anger and frustration on their dogs, blaming them for personal issues. This has perpetuated a cycle of abusive dog ownership that has persisted for decades, excusing harmful practices passed down through generations. David S. Meck's work inadvertently set back dog training by decades. Cesar Millan and the producers of his show should take responsibility for their contributions to this issue, as he is one of the most influential figures in promoting these harmful practices. Cesar Millan became well known as a dog trainer, but his focus on entertainment over the welfare of dogs has caused lasting damage. The effects of his show will take generations to overcome. Story 23. Trying to find reasons to condemn others and feel morally superior simply because you may not feel superior in other ways can stem from a lack of self-esteem. Story 24. Alcohol is one of the most common ways of socializing and is even seen as a must-have in celebrations, such as weddings. Story 25, Stranger Danger, was an effort primarily focused on preventing child sexual abuse by warning children against associating with unfamiliar adults. In reality, over 90% of child sexual abuse is perpetrated by someone known to the child or the child's family. A better alternative, as highlighted by Child Safe Canada, is to focus on identifying inappropriate actions and behaviors, regardless of the person. Story 26. I live in Appalachia. People who are peaceful and in harmony with nature will hike to our rivers and balance rocks, which they believe increases their vibrations. But what does it really do? It takes nature and turns it into a sign that says, "Humans were here," which defeats the purpose of being in nature. Additionally, we have critically endangered aquatic life that depends on those rocks for their habitat. Searching for the perfect flat rock to enhance your energy can harm the creatures that need the most protection. Please stop balancing rocks in the middle of a river. All it does is make you think you are unique and special. Story 27. Some consulting companies reduce your salary every time you are sick for less than 5 days in a row. Weighing salary against health is illegal in Europe, but their salary contracts are complicated enough that they can still do it. Story 28. Putting every piece of produce in its own plastic bag is unnecessary. Why do you do that? You know you have to wash it anyway, right? It has been sitting in dirt, so do you really think the cart or your reusable bag will make it dirtier? Story 29. Minor issue, but sagging your pants can lead to hip problems. I have seen many young adults who sagged their pants develop issues because they altered their gait as a result. Story 30. Eat all the food on your plate. This was reasonable in times of scarcity, but now we face a serious issue with childhood obesity. Story 31. iPad babies. Please take the screens away. It is going to create another baby boomer generation that will disrupt things for everyone after us and ruin all our progress. Story 32. The war on drugs. In my country, you can still be jailed for your own good if you use the wrong substance. Story 33. Zero-tolerance policies in schools seem unreasonable. When a student is attacked and defends themselves, they often face harsher punishments than the aggressor. It is perplexing that someone being attacked can receive a week-long suspension, while the attacker only gets a detention. Story 34. Prison industrial complex. People believe that locking up criminals increases safety. However, more than half of prisoners have untreated trauma and mental illness that are not addressed in prison and are often exacerbated. In the long term, we need a restorative system rather than a punitive one if we genuinely want to enhance safety. Instead, many prefer the illusion of safety, using criminality as a scapegoat. Meanwhile, solve rates for violent crimes remain exceedingly low. Story 35. Grass lawns that resemble wall-to-wall carpet are responsible for significant environmental destruction. Story 36. Letting your cats freely roam outside has harmed wildlife in the United States. People continue to do this, not realizing that cats are apex predators that ruthlessly kill native birds, bats, rodents, amphibians, and reptiles. It is very selfish. Story 37. Raking up leaves and placing them in a large plastic bag to dispose of them in a landfill raises the question. Why create more waste when we can use nature in more beneficial ways? Story 38. A children's education system that refuses to accept that children develop at different speeds is problematic. Nearly all school systems worldwide operate on the premise that at a certain age, a child should be able to perform specific tasks. If they cannot, it is viewed as an issue. However, the reality is that all children develop at different rates. Some may struggle with reading for longer than their peers, only to grasp it effortlessly a year or two later. Having these artificial checkpoints is unhealthy for children, as it leads them to believe they are failing or deficient. This situation also causes stress and worry for their parents. It particularly harms undiagnosed neurodivergent children, who may take news of their perceived failures to heart more than others. While it is important to assess children periodically to ensure their development, the education system needs to be more relaxed and flexible to accommodate the fact that all children learn differently. Story 39. Purity culture teaches that a person's worth as a human being depends on their virginity. This perspective is deeply damaging. It fails to educate individuals about healthy relationships and suggests that some people deserve to be assaulted because they did not adhere to certain rules. It creates divisions among women, fosters shame, and undermines genuine friendships. Individuals who have been told their entire lives that merely thinking about sex makes them undesirable are not magically able to change their mindset on their wedding night. This culture does not teach about responsive desire or consent. It places the burden of responsibility for men's behavior on women. Furthermore, it fails to provide accurate medical or scientific information regarding bodies and sexual health. It conveys the message that one's body belongs to someone else, often someone they have never met and who may not even exist. Ultimately, this belief system does not lead to a reduction in unwanted pregnancies or sexually transmitted infections. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.